right, welcome to another oh my gosh edition. I probably said that pretty loud this time. I usually don't. And I guess the reason I just sounded so loud is so I'm so excited. I get to talk to a gentleman that I've been getting to know over the last month or so, and his name's Scott Schilling, and he has honored us by being willing to be on the show with us today. And it's just, when you think about all the people, I'm at probably 400 episodes in the last 3 years, and I have some favorites. And I know this is going to be one of those favorites, because when you meet with like-minded individuals and you have people that have gone before you in some of the things that you truly want to do, or the way that you want to impact people or help people, it's just so neat to be able to talk to them, because I'll tell you guys right now who are watching this show and who are involved, I'm expecting to get more out of this than probably you will. So I want you to take notes, but I get to, there's just, like I said, there's people that you get to spend time with. And, Scott has been part of the speaking world and the coaching world and helping people in a big way for a couple decades now, if not over 3 decades, where he's really, truly been able to be out there and help people. I know one of the things that he told me when we first met is I've been out, on the road and speaking to people and speaking to groups, and I've done over 3,000 of them in my career. And then I started, when you do the math on that, and there's only 365 days in a year, and somebody is not actually out doing an event every single day. But when you've done 3,000, you're just about out there every single day. And that means the amount of people that he got to sit in front of, and the amount of people that he got to talk to. And if you've been doing it for 3 decades, and for those of you that are younger, you might not know this, but like pre-2000, there wasn't an internet, there wasn't a Zoom, there wasn't the ability to do this online stuff. I was teaching at it was Azusa Pacific University, and I was in charge of a master's program in educational technology. So I got my master's in ed tech. We're teaching teachers how to utilize technology in the classroom. Now, we started out, like when I was teaching my first classes, a big part of what I was teaching was how to connect a VCR in your classroom. Like, this is actually how you plug in the RCA cable and connect them. And then all the internet stuff we did. So we finally got these distance learning televisions, and they were, the big tube televisions, and they probably had, they were probably 55 inches, but they weren't flat screens like you just put up on the wall. We rolled them into the rooms, and we were able to connect to another campus that was, 100 miles away. And that was like the coolest thing ever. And it was like, we were looking at robots as we were turning around. And now we just get on Zoom, like you were telling me earlier, that you just talked to somebody in Ireland today. That wouldn't happen. We had this thing called FredMail back, I think it's probably 93 or 94. We had FredMail. And when we would send an email, I don't know if you believe this, you probably remember this. It would take 3 days for our email to get from, so this is before CompuServe and AOL. And so we would be able to dial up this, make all this noise, and then it would, send our email to another computer, and it would call another computer, and then it would take 3 days to get from California to New York. We were excited. We were excited about the technology. So when I think about, what you had to do back in the 90s and the early 2000s in order to connect with people and to spend time with people, how exciting that must have been. And how much, effort and time you had to spend, like running off and going to the Kinko's and that kind of stuff, to put stuff together. You wasn't just going to email somebody something before. The preparation and the things you had to do are all just incredibly amazing. And I can't wait to hear a little bit about that. But before we do, Scott, I want to hear your story. I know I haven't heard it all yet, and I know it's an exciting one. And as I tell all of our guests, you can, talk about from the time you were born till now, or anywhere in the between. And so I'm going to give the floor to you, and I'm going to let you tell your story, and then we can chop it up right after that. So thank you again for being on. Thank you for being part of this and giving us the honor today. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the opportunity. It's always just an honor to be able to share a little bit. And it's interesting. You started making me think of things like the abacus and
Yes.
all sorts of, I'm not quite that forgot.
No, you're not that old, but
Anyway, where do I start? I think the formidable years are really when you go off to higher education or school or whatever you choose to do. I was blessed. I went off to the University of Iowa not only to go get a degree, but to play Big Ten football for Coach Hayden Fry. Go Hawks. Anyway, but while I was doing that, it was at a time I was going to get a Bachelor of Business Administration degree with a marketing major, but there were no jobs at the time. You were going off at a time where you would get a college education and theoretically you'd get a job. Well, there weren't any jobs to be had at that time. And so it was like, what was going to make me different? And so I became a licensed life insurance agent at the age of 18 while I was playing Big Ten football and going to school all at the same time. Now, was it that I really wanted to be a life insurance agent? No. What I wanted to learn is face-to-face communication ability. I wanted to learn the ability to talk to people because I knew if I had that skill set and I had maybe 4 years of experience under my belt, I believe that, in fact, with my degree, I would now have choices. I would have different opportunities that many people would have that didn't do that. Well, that's exactly the way it worked out. I had 7 job offers coming out of school at a time when most people had none. I was extremely blessed. So now I had choices. There were 4 within the industry, within the insurance industry. Believe it or not, even though I was pretty darn good at it, I didn't want to stay in the industry. See, I was 18, 19, 20, 21 years old talking about death to these really old people. Yes. They were like 40, right? And so they were way old, right?
Way old.
So I didn't handle that necessarily well. Even though I was really good at selling the insurance, I wasn't good at understanding the process behind it as much as I could have or should have. So that got rid of 4 of the choices. Then came down to IBM, Shell Oil, Amana Refrigeration. At the time, IBM was a blue suit, white shirt, red tie, everyday kind of person. And I didn't know that I had that kind of discipline to really fall into that mold. So now it became between Shell Oil, multi-billion dollars, and Amana Refrigeration, $500 million. Well, I felt 2 things. Number one, I could stay living in Iowa City and go to work for Amana. I could rocket through a $500 million company faster than I could rocket through a multi-billion dollar company. So I chose Amana. And why did I go into corporate America? My dad worked for the same company for 46 years, from the time he was 17 till he was 63 when he retired. That's the model I saw. So therefore, that's what you did. Went to work, and I did that. I rocketed through. I was a national sales trainer at 25. I was the youngest sales manager in company history at 26, the youngest divisional manager in company history at 29. And literally by 29 years old, I had hit the top field position I could have and was running a division here in Dallas, Texas. And, corporate America changed. And they made some requests of me to do certain things, and they had every right to ask me. I had every right to say no. I just didn't have every right to say no and still work there. So I chose to leave that organization and became the vice president of sales for another company. And we built that for a period of time. And that's when I first started experiencing really the entrepreneurial life of going out and doing it for myself again. And so I became a consultant. Well, it just so happened that the things that I was consulting on people liked. And so they would typically say, well, why don't you become our executive vice president? So I would end up back in a company again until we did the actions that we all suggested would happen. And then we'd exit, and then it'd be, okay, then I'll go out and consult again, and back and forth. So I did that multiple times. And probably the fourth time I did that, I really felt that, sales training, being in front of a room, being in front of people was always part of my life. Mm-hmm. And so, but I felt that I could serve more people if I became a professional speaker, full bore. And so I did. I decided that I was going to go off and become a professional speaker. So I retained one of the many mentors I've had over my career. I learned the business, and he basically had never, although he had trained thousands upon thousands of students, he had never really recommended anybody, to any companies. And a company came to him and said, we need a speaker. And he said, I've never recommended anybody until now. Scott's your guy. And I went and interviewed with him, saw him, and saw the presentation. And they said, well, John says you're the guy. And I said, well, it's really nice of him to say that. And they said, so you're going to join us? And I said, doing that presentation? They said, yeah. I said, nope. I said, I'm not going to do that presentation. And they said, well, why not? And I said, it doesn't fit who I am. I can't do it with integrity and with all good conscience. If I can't do it with integrity and do it the right way, I can't do it. And they said, well, come on back the next day and see it again. So I saw it again. They said, what do you think? I said, you're even better today than you were yesterday. Okay, good. You're going to join us? Absolutely not. And they said, why not? And I said, I'm not that. Mm-hmm. And it will not come out authentically. It will not be in integrity. And they said, well, what would you do? And I said, I would modify it so that it did come out authentically. And so they asked me how I'd modify it. And they said, well, that'll never work. And I said, okay. I said, I'll make you a deal. Let's give it a shot for 90 days. And if in fact it doesn't work, fire me. And if it does, we'll keep on going. Well, we took that company from 8 million to 100 million in about 5.5 years. We put my sales training in it as well. We went from 37 people to 452. So one of us was right. Yeah. We were able we were able to make it work and grow some amazing things. But I think what there are times in your career and in your life, you've got to have conviction. You've got to believe in you. And there's a difference between quiet confidence and arrogance or egotism. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've never been the ego arrogant guy. I have been the confident guy because I work diligently to learn my craft and to do everything you can possibly do. And that's where it comes from. It comes from a quiet confidence of being able to know that you've been a product of the product, a student of the industry. And when you take that approach to things, it'll take you to some pretty amazing places.
Oh, that's so cool. So cool. And so, as I'm thinking through and you're going through this, and there's some similarities in our story. I was a college athlete as well, and got to participate a little bit, through college. And I was a track guy, so they wouldn't let me. We tried to play football, and there's only one of us that they allowed to play football that were on the track team. And he ended up, his name was Christian McCoy. He ended up going and played for Kansas City and that kind of stuff. The rest of us tried, and they wouldn't let us play because we were track scholarships. But I got to go to Europe and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that molded me when I think about identity into that confidence and that ability. Is that kind of the same for you? I mean, you're even way younger than I was when I finally started working and into sales and stuff. But what was that part of, just, would you say athletics had anything to do with it? Was your upbringing, did you grow up in Iowa City, or where did you actually?
I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin.
So I was a 5-sport athlete. And what's funny is that I played football. If you saw me, I went to basketball camp every summer, but if you looked at me, I don't necessarily have that basketball body, but I was I played all except for 4 plays my entire high school career in football.
Wow.
And that was, I was knocked out. I got cold cocked and came out of the game for a few plays and then went back in. But I played offense, I played defense, I kicked, and I punted. And so I did literally everything, as a football player. And I had the opportunity to go to a number of schools and play other positions, kick and punt and play other positions on full scholarships, things like that. And actually, I was at Drake on a visit and was pretty much intending to go there. And the Iowa coaches called while I was there and said, "Are you flying or driving?" I said, "Driving." "Well, then stop back through Iowa City." And so I stopped back through and saw Iowa City and the Iowa Hawkeyes program and all that. And they said, "Well, we got good news and other news." And we got other news and good news. And I said, "Well, what's the other news?" "Well, we're late in the recruiting season. We've already doled out all our scholarships, so we don't have any." And I said, "Well, what's the good news?" "The good news is if you are who we believe you are and what you can do, you will earn one after the first season for the rest of your career." And so I turned down full rides other places to walk on at Iowa, and I earned my spot. And one of the stories that I share is there were at that time really 2 people that believed in me, and that was me and God. If I had the opportunity to do that, it just seemed like the thing to do. So athletics was a big part of, and when I didn't come in as a hero, right? Because I was a walk-on. Yeah. And so I had to earn my spot. And same thing, nobody graced me with all these platforms to speak on. I had to earn all those spots. And so for me, it's never been about, I read See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar when I was probably 17, 18 years old. There was a quote in that book that forever set a course for life and put me on my path. You can have everything in life you want when you help enough other people get what they want. So I always came out of this, was I, quote unquote, a talented player or a talented this or that? I think most people would say that. Was I one that would tell everybody about that? No, I'm not that guy. And so my superpower is third-party advocacy. It's actually lifting other people up. You can sell you. Typically, I can sell you better. It's not an egotistical or arrogant statement. It's a sales psychology statement. If you tell me you're awesome, what do I expect you to tell me? You're not awesome? You're never going to tell me that. So therefore, it doesn't necessarily influence me when you tell me all sorts of wonderful things about you. But if I say you're awesome, and then I ask you the question, "Brian, why does everybody say you're so awesome?" Now you're being informational. You're no longer egotistical or arrogant. It's simply informational. That's my superpower, is positioning people, products, and things so that people see them in the true light that they have. Well, so for me, it's never been about trying to achieve the greatest notoriety or the whatever. Now, did I work diligently to make my craft the best it could be? Absolutely. Did I work to make my name the most known? Absolutely not. God's plan and timing is perfect. The right people will know. Those who are supposed to know will know. And I'll work with those who I'm supposed to, and I won't with those I'm not. Just kind of works out that way.
That's so huge in the identity part, though, that you were able to see that. Like you said, that's a superpower, to be able to see that. When I talked about some of our similarities, I started out as a teacher, and I came up as a special ed kid, and they told me I couldn't do it. And so, a teacher, and then I got into the life insurance thing, and I got into sales and doing that. But I can remember some of the pivotal people that were in my sales life. I remember going to a Tom Hopkins seminar. I feel good. I feel fine. I feel this way. Whatever all the things that we did that we're talking about some of the psychology that you're talking about. Was that something that you adapted very early or were there like people that were part of your, I guess at the beginning, I guess you said you had some pretty good coaches and stuff that were there and mentors. I think you told me that. I don't know if we talked about it online, but what was that like? I mean, how were you attracted to those folks and how did you respond? Because so many people go to them. Like, how many people go to Tony Robbins every year? That come out of there, and then how many people are actually able to absorb it and then be able to take it and make something out of it?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Tony Robbins. I was the first guy to sell a non-Tony Robbins product on a Tony Robbins stage. So I've been blessed to do events with him and for him and a lot of the other names as well. Mm-hmm. The reality is, for me, it is always just about being very proficient at your craft. If you're speaking, you want to be the best speaker you can be, meaning not the one that everybody goes, oh my God, he's like, oh, he's so, it's, wow, that was impactful. That was powerful. That's something that will stick with me. As an example, Zig Ziglar is that guy in my world. Somewhat underspoken, not as many people know about him as should know about him, one of those kind of things. But what he said was very powerful and impactful. Jack Canfield is another guy like that, right? Both mentors that I worked with over time, have shared the stage with, went on the road with, all those things. So you start to see who you want to model. And you can model being a really good person that has pure intent and the desire to do really good work. You don't have to be a jerk. You can be, you just don't have to be, right? So again, a lot of these things come with choice, right? I mean, it's funny because sometimes when I say, at one point, it was literally Stephen Forbes, Colin Powell, me, Tom Hopkins. Funny you mentioned him. Lou Holtz, Laura Bush, Rudy Giuliani, in order. And so here I am in the middle of that mix, right? Everybody knew everybody else. They didn't know me. Well, my job was to be that guy that was known. My job was to do something else for the benefit of everybody, right? And so I had my job to do. Well, it's interesting if I think back again. At one time in football, I was an offensive center, I was an offensive tackle, I was a defensive end, I was a defensive tackle, I was an outside linebacker, I was a kicker, I was a punter. Yeah. So which one of those is the most important?
All of them.
Yes. The answer is yes at the appropriate time, right?
Yeah.
And so, as a kicker, you're a hero or a zero.
Oh, gosh.
You kick it through the uprights or you don't. It's pretty simple, right? I mean, and there's no, you can't get too high and you can't get too low. You got to just give it everything you got every time. And for me, it was kind of like that. I knew my intent was when you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want, right? I knew that was the foundation. So when I went into the speaking business, before I did 3,000 live events, my intent was to deliver a message that truly served the audience. When I come on here on your show like this, my intent is to support the good work that you're doing with the show and supply the audience a really solid message that can serve them. If I do those two things well, I'll be okay. I understand that thoroughly. And so again, I've shared the stage with every name you know. I can tell you all the good ones. I can tell you all the ones that think they're good. I can tell you all the ones that are so incongruent It's crazy. And where do you find that out? You don't find it out on stage. That's when they're acting. You find it out back in the green room.
Yeah.
And so you see who are the real people, who are the ones that you want to emulate. And I've been blessed to have that opportunity, whether that be all the way back to Coach Hayden Fry at the University of Iowa. I mean, the legendary man who, if you look at his coaching tree, it's crazy. Everybody that he built and all that crazy in a good way, right?
Mm-hmm.
John Childers, an amazing speaking mentor. Jack Canfield, an amazing success mentor. James Smith, amazing real estate. Freddie Rick, amazing, and Mike Koval, amazing in the stock markets. You surround yourself with the very best people you can that are that are aligned with you in your process, right? I mean, there are other speaker coaches than John Childers. There weren't any that were closer aligned to who I am and who I wanted to be than John Childers. And so, I mean, there are speaker coaches out there, as an example, that work to make all their students mini thems.
Yeah.
Well, you're not a mini them.
Mm-mm.
You're a you. And so wherever your mentors lie, whether it is how to do podcasts, there are podcasting mentors. Then you've got to find the ones that are in fact aligned with the intent that you're working to pursue and put out there and do good work in the marketplace.
Oh my gosh, I love the fact that you said that, because you're saying, you know what, there's a lot of people out there. There's even people that you will like, that you will see that, I love the way they did a speech and things that we try to, emulate a part of. But it's one thing to align yourself with your values that you talked about and your character that you talked about. And that, now I find that person that can probably take me to that next level. You talked about a little bit about, mastering your craft and the amount of, you really didn't talk about how much time it takes, but I would love to kind of walk through, this, we call it now personal development, and, you got to go do this many hours of personal development. And, you hear like Peyton Manning said, well, once you get that 10,000 hours, or I'm not sure whoever said it first. You probably do, being able to do it. But kind of talk to me about what that looked like through your career. Is, you're now on stage with big people, you're on stage with little people, you're doing lots of them. At some point, you're affecting and impacting an audience. But I just have a feeling for you, you weren't satisfied with everything you were doing. You still wanted to get better.
It really comes down to constant and never-ending personal improvement. You've got to keep on getting better, and that's a Tony Robbins can I, right? But as an example, I was doing this presentation at one time, and we modified it, and I was doing an event with Brian Tracy, and we were backstage, and I said, Brian, I feel like I really got this presentation down, but it just doesn't, I don't know, it's not clicking. It's just not coming together like I thought. He goes, how long is it? And I said, well, it's just under 2 hours. He said, okay, well, for every hour of presentation, it takes 8 hours to really groove it. And I go, oh man, I've done it so many more times. He goes, wait. I wasn't done. He goes, it takes 8 hours for every 1 hour for the first 50 times.
Oh.
And I said, what? And he said, so if you've got a 2-hour talk, that's a minimum of 800 hours. That's a minimum before you're going to have that grooved. And you start to go, holy shnikes, right?
Wow.
And what's interesting is I did one presentation, 21,557 words. I did it over 1,500 times. And I can tell you, I can assure you it was grooved. I haven't done that presentation in years. I bet you I could start up a lot of it right now, right? Because it becomes so unconscious competent as you do things. So again, I mean, I think a lot of times people, it's funny. I went past I was watching a college football game yesterday, and a kid kicked a 63-yard field goal and set a new record for his school and all that, which was really cool. And as he was lining up for it, I said, I used to practice back in the day at 64 yards because the NFL record at the time was 63.
Yeah.
And so I would practice at 64. And I hit 64 in practice a ton. I never had the opportunity to do it in a game, but that's where I practiced from because the record was 63. I was going to beat it at 64. And so it was cool to see that yesterday. But again, think about this. I haven't played ball in quite a while, but that was the thought that came to me when he was getting lined up to kick that kick. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how it, when you have a desire, the only thing I ever want to do is share a message with high intention, low attachment, a high intention of imparting something great for each and every one of the people listening, a low attachment as to what exactly I say for either them or for me or for you. In other words, there's no attachment to it. It's my intent is to come on your show and provide as much value as I possibly can without trying to determine what value for who, with what.
Yeah.
There are no strings to it, right? And I think that that's the thing that if more people would just live in that high intention, low attachment phase, because what tends to frustrate them many times is not the outbound first intention. It's the attachment that they have to that intention when somebody doesn't react to it the way that they would like them to react to it. I have said to people, I've won 100% of my audiences exactly never, nor do I anticipate I ever will. My intention is to positively impact the most number of lives I can every time I share something.
I love that. The thing that popped into my head when you just said that, like I've never had the 100% of my audience. I think even when your audience is yourself in the mirror, you don't even have that person.
No, I get mad at me too.
I love that. So when I think about the value that you're giving and that you're there, you just talked about all the time that you spent. I really want to kind of talk about distractions because now we're in this world that's not as simple, right? You worked on the same speech because we have all of these ideas that are being bombarded with us through the internet and through different people. And so how would you help an individual say, okay, I want you to hone in your craft, and it's really hard to figure out what my craft is right now because in 6 months it could change a little bit, or if it is the same one, then what? But because we have all these dangling shiny objects that we think we have to be part of, how do you help somebody do that?
Well, I think that first of all, understand 30 days, 90 days, 180 days from now, things are going to be different because the world doesn't stop. So things are always going to become different. You've got to be set on what makes your heart happy and what, really, and I think I shared this story with you back in December. I was doing a gratitude video. I was just celebrating the 10-year anniversary of my near-death experience. Mm-hmm. And I was just saying, hey, I'm grateful for being here. I take no credit. God gets all the glory. It was his grace, mercy, and favor. And I had intended to just be grateful, right? Well, here I am looking at myself on the screen and I went, wow, I guess I should ask, have I accomplished what he saved me for? And I went, some of it, but not nearly enough of it, man. And so I started looking at my own business and what I was doing, and I was doing all sorts of, I had all these different pillars that I was building off: a speaker, author, trainer, coach, consultant, media host, had podcasts and TV shows. And I'm like, why are you doing all this? Because you're good at it? That's not a good reason. Just by the way, in my mind, it's not a good reason. And so I said, what really makes you happy? Well, training and speaking. What brings you the most joy? When I'm coaching, I'm training, I'm speaking, I'm sharing a message that you can see land, that improves somebody's life for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. Wow. I said, that's it. I'm going to stop doing all that other stuff. And it's not that I don't enjoy it or I'm not good at it. I am. Was it fulfilling? Not really. It was doing stuff to do stuff. And you sit and you go, again, what brings you joy? What gives you the greatest satisfaction, for what wakes you up in the morning? What keeps you up at night? What keeps you fired up to keep on going, right? We can all do a lot of stuff. Everybody who's listening here is infinitely talented.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, what makes you happy when you're using the talents? What brings you joy? What enthuses you? Enthusiasm comes from the word entheos, of God's Spirit. What puts you in God's Spirit? What are you enthusiastic about? Now, if you can make a living being enthusiastic every day, your vocation becomes a vacation.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that is so good, and I love the way that you put that. Us being able to find, because like you said, we are so talented and we can do so many different things. But what is that joy? I heard a pastor this week that became, I guess he was a businessman and he became a pastor. Now he's starting to do some online stuff, and he says, now that we're older, he's the same age as kind of we are, but he said, I had this conversation with God, and he told me, I want you to, all the stuff that I put on the inside that I want to come out, that's what I want you to talk about. Not all the stuff that you're able to do, but what does he put you on this earth to do,
right,
that he gives you so much joy when you're doing that. That's what he needs to let out, and that's why it becomes your purpose. And what I call living boldly in that purpose. One of the things that I would love to hear, maybe, because through this whole thing, and as you're doing all these things and speaking, you also have a family, and you have a life that's outside of speaking. How did you balance, or that was influenced, because it seems like you had to be on the road a lot, but at the same time, I'm sure amazing dad and all that kind of stuff continue to happen. How did you balance that, and how were you able to reconcile with that every time you were out doing stuff?
Well, for me, there's two great books by Dr. Gary Chapman, the five love languages, but also the 5 apology languages.
Oh, yeah.
and so, I mean, it's interesting. And I did this analysis, when I was on the road, I would send flowers each week to my wife, right? I would do certain things either before I left or when I came back as acts of service. I would, to this day, I give her a back rub virtually every night, when we're together. So everything, I did 4 out of the 5 love languages extremely well, even from the road. Her love language was quality time.
Okay, there you go. It's
so,
the hardest. Yeah.
So the point is, but I had to come to recognize that, right?
Yeah.
So then when I was back off the road, then we had to spend really quality time. Well, then it's funny when I stopped, I mean, I spoke 288 times a year for 6 years. I was traveling a lot. And then you stop doing that. Well, that changes your routine again. And then it's, everything is about is evaluating what's going on and potentially modifying and re-executing, right? I actually do a talk called Dare to Dream. Dream, decide on your future. R, restructure your activities. E, evaluate what's going on. A, analyze and modify. M, modify and re-execute. Dream, you're constantly looking at situations and modifying, and you can tell when things are good and you can tell when things are less than good. You got to figure it out. And sometimes you got to have some friends that point it out to you. And sometimes you have a spouse that points it out to you and everything. But, I mean, how do you do it? You understand what the main thing is, right? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it? It's funny. And I'm not going to, when you're in front of 25,000 people in an arena and they're clapping for you and cheering and doing stuff, it's cool. I'm not going to pretend it's not. But is it the coolest thing? Not really. It's cool, but it's coolest when your wife comes up and hugs you and your kids run up, or they say, "Daddy, I remember when," or those kinds of things. When you're speaking in Houston and your daughter's got her last volleyball game and you bust out and you fly out and you make sure you're in the stands. It's why do all the other things if it doesn't support you doing the important things?
Wow, it is so true. And I was thinking that the reason we have airplanes and we have buses and we have cars is so that we can connect. They're connecting tools that allow us to be in those places that are so vitally important. My wife's love language is words of affirmation, and so which is great for me because it's not the quality of time. In fact, we are now, since we're both working from home, she has an embroidery business in our basement, and I do all the stuff that I'm doing, and so she loves when I come down and I say stuff, and then it's like, go away. I need to go to the We don't need to spend time together right now. If Isaac's a surface, but it's so neat that played out in your life. Just briefly, kind of talk to me about that transition from before you were a dad to being a dad. I think we talk a lot about how we know all kids need to have a dad that's there and present, and that's part of what makes us great human beings, as having a mom and dad, and that there. But sometimes we don't talk about what it actually means to be a dad. And maybe you can just walk me through that, how you felt and how that might have changed some of the things you do just because you are a dad. I love that story.
In the early years, I made a lot of mistakes.
Okay.
I mean, my kids were 28 months old and 10 months old when I came home from a business trip, and my wife said, "I want you out." And I said, "What did I do?" And she said, "I just don't love you anymore." I said, "We got a 28-month-old and a 10-month-old. Yeah. Better to be from a broken home than in a broken home." When did it break? I didn't know. And so quite frankly, we got divorced, but I went to counseling, and at 6 months, the counselor was like, "You don't need to be here anymore." And I said, "You're going to keep on taking my money until I tell you I'm not coming anymore." and I went for 2 years. And I said, "I'm never going to feel this again. I'm not going to miss." It sounds weird, and there are plenty of books on parenting today. There weren't as many back then. And I certainly didn't read them. And so I thought you did what you did. You worked hard and you brought home the money and you did, did the stuff. I thought that was the thing. And then you learn that's not the thing, right? And again, so I went to counseling. I was never going to let that happen again. Well, November 25th will be 30 years married to my wife, Peggy. I'm not letting it happen again, right? Mm-hmm. I actually had some strained times with my kids growing up because of being separated and things like that. And then you finally get to the point where you have a dinner with your daughter, and she said, "Daddy, I don't know if you noticed, but through college, I dated everybody who wasn't you." And I said, "I noticed, right?" And she said, "But I just want you to know now, I just wish I could find somebody that's you." And so no matter how bad you messed it up, you didn't do it on purpose. I certainly didn't. But did I mess it up? There's no doubt that I messed it up. And so you spend then, once you have growth equals awareness plus inspired action. In order to grow, you first have to understand there's something to grow into. You have to have this awareness. And then you have to take that inspired action from that point. When I figured out kind of how bad I had messed up, or that I had messed up and that I needed to and wanted to fix it, that's what I did. And then you get to the point where all of a sudden they go, yeah, they get old enough, you get old enough, you talk enough, you do everything. And then you go, wow, this isn't the way we want it. And so you make it better and you fix it. That's pretty consistent, not only in parenting, but it's consistent in all of it, right? We have this tendency of taking our eye off the ball. We get enamored with like you say, the shiny object, right? And that might be your career. All of a sudden your career takes off and you go, aren't I wonderful? Well, no, you're the same schmuck you've been this entire time. You just had some good things happen to you, right? And so that's where it's kind of the not being too high or too low or things like that. I've been blessed. There are not many people on the planet that can legitimately say they've done over 3,000 live events with the number of people in the audiences, sold as much from stage. But that in a quarter gets me a quarter. Who cares? I mean, they're true, they're statements, but they're not the most important statements, right? You're going to get to the pearly gates someday and they're not going to go, oh, by the way, how many events have you done? Or how many people were sitting in chairs in front of you?
Yeah.
It's going to be, how much positive impact did you create? How many people did you lift up? What did you do? What have you done to be a service to the greater good, right? And so, I mean, I just think that I'm no better than anybody else. I've made plenty of mistakes. I've had plenty of challenges. Okay. Once again, then a quarter gets you a quarter. You just fight through it and you go next, right? It doesn't have to, no matter where you are, good, bad, or indifferent, you don't have to stay there. You can do something, right? You can learn something, you can change something, you can grow something, you can do something that is more valuable than the position you're at the moment. And so very rarely do we have all parts of our life spinning like a top. We might have, out of 7 areas of life, we might have 3 or 4 of them that are just humming. But those other 2, or maybe just one of them, are like a train wreck waiting to happen. And so you're not really any different than anybody else out there. And if anybody says they don't have any challenges, they got one, they lie. Right? I mean, it's interesting. You talked, you see the articles of some of the wealthiest people on the planet, and they're not happy.
All of them was unhappy.
Well, you've got all the resources you can possibly have, yeah, but they don't have any friendships, or they don't have any loving relationships, or they don't have any this, or they don't have any that. Everything is a balance at some point. And I know for me, when the stages just kind of went away, not just for me, really for everybody. So you had to choose to do something else. Okay, well, I'm just going to invest in more people. I'm going to talk to more people. I'm going to coach more people. I'm going to train more people. If you can't just, no, trust me, anybody says, would you like to speak in front of 25,000 again? Not until today. I mean, I'm there. Just tell me where to go. I would love to. So anyway, we all work at it all the time. And anybody who sits there and says, well, I got it all figured out, ain't got it figured out.
No. Yeah, you think of this, this that we do in the blip of time, we say, okay, what impact? And we want to hear, good job, my good and faithful servant. Right? Maybe talk about, in a few minutes we have left, but I really want to hear about how faith has played as part of your who you are, your character, your values, your core of who you are, and how much of that has been part of what makes you you.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think I grew up around church in Milwaukee growing up, and then kind of got out of organized religion for a period of time, eventually came down here to Texas. And a big part of it was, all of a sudden having 2 young kids and a wife that didn't want to be married. And you kind of go, well, this doesn't feel good and this isn't right. So part of it was getting into a more spiritual pursuit and learning faith. And I got water baptized February 5th, 1992, as part of this transition. And then, I just kept on seeking and working to learn more. And I got, there's one definition for 2 words: confidence in the unseen, assurance of the unknown is the definition of fear.
Yeah.
But confidence in the unseen, assurance of the unknown is also the definition of faith. And the only place that definition is verified and validated is in Hebrews 11:1 in the Bible. And so you got 2 choices, the positive or the less than positive alternatives of that definition, right? And, I just, have continued to grow my faith and understand there isn't a single person that would be in business if they didn't have faith.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know that to be true? Confidence in the unseen, assurance of the unknown. Confidence in the unseen. That means I don't know if anybody will ever make my phone ring. I'm confident that I don't know if that's going to happen. Assurance of the unknown. I don't know if they'll ever walk through my door or do business with me. And yet I still have a business. That means you must have faith that you have a business worthy of somebody doing it with you. And so, I've given my pre-event prayer many times to start talks from stage. And at one event, a woman came up to me afterwards, you're signing books and doing all that stuff. And she said, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. She goes, how do you have the courage to start and run your entire talk with faith? And I said, well, I'm allergic to lightning. And she said, what? And I said, I only work for one guy. I've already learned I'm allergic to lightning. I don't need to push it any further. Right? And the reality is, where I really learned the value of being open with your faith was when I was speaking in Singapore. And at the time, there were about 6,000 in the audience. It was going to be the biggest audience that I was going to speak to at that time. Now it's, 26,000. But anyway, I looked from behind the curtain before they were announcing me, and I said, man, I need some strength. I better create a pre-event prayer. So I sat behind stage and I created my pre-event prayer and I said it. They called me on stage. I went out and I said, hello, Singapore. Let's start with my pre-event prayer. Lord, allow the words I share here today to positively impact 100% of the lives in this audience, one way, shape, or form. Only you know who you sent here to hear this message. Allow me to do the best I can to deliver that message, be a vehicle and of service to you. See, that's all I can ever control, is having a high intention and a low attachment. A high intention of imparting something great for each and every one of you, and a low attachment as to what that is for you or for me. So can we get started here today? Yeah, let's go. Well, that's the way I started the talk. And there were 4 Muslim women that met me at the stairs after the talk and said, Mr. Scott, can we get our picture made with you? And I said, well, certainly. But I said, hear my heart. I don't purport to understand your culture, but I didn't think you did a lot of that. And they said, oh, we don't. And I said, well, okay, so why would you want to get your picture made with me? Well, we only take pictures of people or things we want to honor. And I said, well, that's very nice. Why would you want to honor me? And they said, because you made us cry. And I said, okay, now that's really weird. You want to honor me because I made you cry? And they said, for the first time in your life, you encouraged us to have faith. You didn't try to convert us. For that, we honor you.
Wow.
And so what happens when you put God first, or you put God in it, is he opens up opportunities for lessons and for things like that, right? And those, then I went back to my hotel room and did some research and found out Singapore was a 10% Christian country. And I went, man, I could have been skewered, but I wasn't, right? So you start to learn that it's not my job to, in my opinion, it is not my job to get you to believe what I believe. It is my job to be a living example of what I believe. And if you want to learn because you've seen the example, I am more than willing to talk to you about it. And that's what I said to this audience in Singapore. I said, it is not my job to get you to believe what I believe. It is my job to be a living example of my belief and to encourage you to be a living example of what you believe. That's our job, is to be the living examples of those beliefs. And that's why they came up and they said, thank you you didn't try to convert us. You honored us. You encouraged us to believe what we believe, but be proud and examples of that. And that's really what, quite frankly, if you take it and carry it over into business, that's what you should be. You should be the living example of your belief in business, that you provide more value to your customer than the customer provides to you. Money is an exchange of value. They give you certificates of appreciation called money because you've given them something of value, whether it be your speaking, your training, your coaching, your whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's an exchange of value. And that's all I want to do, is I want to exchange more value with more people for the rest of my life.
Have you gotten really good at not trying to pursue things you can't control? When I think of like the whole goal setting world, is we set these goals and, I'm going to have, 100,000 people that are going to show up on my, my YouTube feed or whatever it is. Well, there's nothing possible in the world that I can do to control that. I can control my activity that might produce that result. But it sounds like through your processes and how you've done stuff, that you figured out, okay, I only need to work on the things that I can control, or that I can do, and not spend time. Has that been hard for you to do that, or was it just like your superpower as well?
I mean, hard is, success is hard, failure is hard. Pick your hard.
Yeah.
The fact is either side is right, but the reality is that we I found the equation for total peace. I truly believe I have, at least. And that is, it's a math equation.
Okay.
And that is, God's plan and timing is perfect, plus sign, all things work together for my good, equal sign, total peace. See, if you understand that God's plan and timing is perfect, you're probably not going to understand much of it, maybe none of it.
Yeah.
Rarely you understand it. God's plan and timing is perfect, plus all things work together for my good. Even though I don't understand God's plan or what he's doing, or why did I have a near-death experience, or why did I have a client that doesn't pay their bills, or whatever. Although I don't understand it, all things work together for my good. So when I take his plan with the understanding that it's done for me, not to me, it equals total peace. How do you get upset with it? You don't necessarily like it. If people aren't working within the boundaries of good business, you give them the opportunities to get inside the boundaries. And if they don't stay inside the lines, so be it. You cut the lines, but the reality is there are people brought into your life for certain reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And very rarely do you understand the reasons when they first happen. It's one of the reasons, quite frankly, I coach people to create an evidence log. Think of all the things that you hope for, you wish for, you plan for, you pray for, you do all this different stuff. And all of a sudden, 5 months from now, they show up. Well, if you don't remember what you prayed 5 months earlier, you don't realize it was delivered. So create an evidence log that says, hey, you know what? Back in March, I really said it would be awesome if I could get on 10 podcasts in a week. Now that I look at it, I've been on 10 podcasts this week. Wow. I prayed for that back in March, and it took until August to happen. Okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Oh, yes.
When we create the evidence log, the other thing it does is it shows good things do happen and they do show up. Sometimes they just take time.
Take time. Well, and the part where all things work together, I think that's when you can come to that absolute conclusion that all things work together, and realize that is absolutely true. Then that changes the game, because I think so many of us at some point are going, well, this doesn't feel like it's working together for good. And then you add that back to God's plan for your life is perfect, and that is going to equal to peace if you can truly believe that. Oh my gosh! Well, I can't leave the podcast yet without asking you about your near-death experience. We talked, it's in my mind. I got it written down, and so maybe just tell us a little bit. I mean, I don't want you to explain more than you want to, but
no, I don't know. So I was going to a speaking event, balanced a box of books on my knee. It was a super cold day here in Dallas. We don't get many of those. Flipped open the back of my Lexus SUV, ducked underneath it. As fast as I threw the hatch up, it came back down because it was so cold. The cylinders didn't hold it. Smacked me in the back of the head. Ultimately dissected a artery in my brain.
Oh gosh.
Had quite a headache, but I had to go on, and so I went and spoke and did all that. Well, 4 days later, I was flying to LA to do an infomercial shoot. Went up through pressure and back down. Thought my head was going to blow off. Okay, got picked up at the airport and my head didn't blow off. So I was still there, had a headache. And, we're guys. We have headaches for 4 days, 8 days. Gosh, that can't mean anything, could it? And so we had shot the first couple of days of the infomercial, took a day off to go to church and do some other cool things. Anyway, we're going to lunch. I was walking, and all of a sudden my legs stopped. And I was standing on 2 tingling stumps from just above the knee down, and started to get disoriented. Luckily, there was a railing behind me. I started to reach out, grab it. I was walking with 7 people, 3 of them doctors. Coincidence? I think not.
No, not at all.
One of them slid a chair underneath me as I was falling backwards. I fell into the chair. He spun around, looked at me, and said, "What's your phone number?" 817-239. Why would you be asking me that now? Can't you see I can't walk? Oh, no reason. Well, I was cold. I was gray. I was sweating profusely. I was clammy, just about to involuntary throwing up. I was in the middle of a full-blown cerebellar stroke. Cerebellum is speech, memory, fine motor skills, walking, talking, vertigo. By the grace of God, I walk out like this. So took me to the emergency room, 5 hours of tests, misdiagnosed me with a major migraine and released me.
Oh, gosh.
I went on set the next day, shot 3 infomercial segments, went to a new neurologist because my head still felt like it was going to blow off. He did an MRI. His first words, "Get your butt to the hospital, check into ICU, you've had a stroke."
Wow.
And then I spent 6 days of intensive care where literally for 6 days, they basically said, "We don't understand why you're alive."
Mm.
And at one point, I got a little irritated and I said, "Sorry to disappoint you. I've always been an overachiever. I lived." And they said, "You're kind of a smart ass." And I said, "No, I'm just not really happy with you telling me I should be dead."
Yeah.
And they said, "We've got 2 other stroke patients here in ICU. Their MRI is not nearly as bad as yours. One, not going to make it. The other one, pretty much totally incapacitated.
Yeah.
You're in here laughing, joking, goofing off. We don't understand." And I said, "I got it all figured out." And they said, "Okay, smartass, what is it?" I said, "It's obvious. It's God's grace, mercy, and favor on my life." They said, "Well, that's as good an answer as we got," and they discharged me.
Oh, gosh. Oh, wow.
And literally 23 days I was back on stage, and they had never seen anybody respond the way I did and all that. And, it's, there were other parts of it. I climbed up on a cloud at one point and, some different things. But the point is, that's where it was really evident to me, because I was in trouble and I came out of it like it hadn't even happened. So much so that it actually, for a period of time, it upset me, because they're like, "There's no way you just had a cerebellar stroke." And I said, that's why I kept on saying, "Sorry to disappoint you. I've always been an overachiever." I don't understand why. I don't understand all the medical stuff behind it. I just know that I was blessed to come through it like this, and therefore, okay, what'd you save me for?
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? What's the assignment?
Yes. Thank you for sharing today. I know, I told you guys, if you're still watching this, which I know a lot of you guys are, you're like, I'm so glued to my screen. But it has been so fantastic to have you. What didn't we talk about? I want you to make sure people can get a hold of you, that, there's something that you wanted to share, because like I said, I was being selfish and I asked everything that I wanted to know, but what would you love to make sure everybody hears that we do?
Now, I think that the thing to let everybody know is you're infinitely talented and capable. You can accomplish anything you want to. If you need some guidance along the way, reach out. I mean, that's one of the things I love to do is encourage people to get there and help them with their path. You know, I think the biggest thing is there are a lot of people that I think get into the point where they question themselves and they do that. Guess what? Everybody does it sometime. It's okay. Just, if your heart is tugging you in a certain direction, go for it. It'll all work out. I didn't say it's going to be easy all the time, but if you want it bad enough and you feel it, go for it. But get the help, get the mentoring. I've written checks to 19 mentors in my career. I did it because I wanted to learn from the best so they could help guide me along the way. So that would be my recommendation, is just live flat out. As Les Brown says, live full, die empty.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Scott. It has been a privilege to be able to have you on. I hope that we get to do this again. And I could talk to you for another few hours. I know some other folks will go, well, how would you do that? I could talk to you for the rest of the day and still only get a glimpse of what he's been doing and how he's been able to impact that. If this is your first show, first time that you've seen it, I would encourage you to hit the notification and subscribe button. There are so many just fun people that I get to talk about. Not just fun, but intellectually stimulating, folks that can help you move the needle. And if that's what you're trying to do, I'd love for you to be able to do that. ScottSchilling.com is Scott's website. I would absolutely 1000% encourage you to go there, see what he has to offer, see if there's something there that you can be encouraged by, that you can grow by. We just scratched the surface on just a few things that he does. I've taken 2 or 3 pages of notes. I know I'm going to go back. I'm going to listen to it several times so that I can improve who I am, so that I can be and become that impact that I think that we're all striving for. And so thank you again for being on. I appreciate you. Did you have that last one was a really good final thought, but I don't know if you have a final thought that you would love to share with everybody. And then we'll be able to
be great to each other. Okay. Let's lift everybody up with some respect, honor, and dignity. Have a great day.
I love it. Thank you. We'll see you guys at the next one. Have an amazing, awesome, incredible day.